friends, welcome to episode 175 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Rob.
How we doing, Rob?
You know, I'm not doing too bad.
Yeah?
I had a strangely productive, busy weekend.
Yeah?
My Labor Day consisted of me finishing my digital map project.
Yes.
Which I will post some stuff for our Patreon
really
members so you guys can see kind of the math and stuff that I went through to get it completed.
You should submit some pictures of that for many of the week.
Yeah, I'll definitely do like a conceptual and then a final because I think I'm happy with how it came out.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a woodworker. I'm not a woodworker.
I mean, you are now.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Apparently so. So, yeah. So it's not bad. I'll probably get some criticism. There's definitely some things I would change on it, but overall that happened. And then Saturday, I went to a LARP.
Yeah?
Yeah, I helped out a friend with a LARP. That was it's his own rule set. It's a 5-page rule set.
Okay.
Originally wanted to do it a 1-page rule set, and we had kids there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean 6-year-olds all the way up to 50-year-olds.
All right.
And it wasn't a lot of people, and it was hot as, sweatiness out there. And but he still ran like a module, and there was stuff that happened, and it went pretty smoothly, honestly.
Good.
And it was interesting to kind of get back into LARP and see where things have evolved and have conversations with people about where that was at, and watch a short-term LARP with a response at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And just people were very happy. They had great feedback,
mm-hmm.
and it's an ongoing story. So it
cool.
was interesting to experience. Like if people have interest in it, I can definitely direct you a little bit to it. It's a work in progress for this guy. He's done a lot of LARP, all kinds of stuff. So a lot of because he was out at Shifted Lands for a while.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
He did Canar. He's done the SCA, which isn't a LARP, but is a LARP. Let's be honest. You're doing medieval history. You're playing a role. It's role playing.
Yeah. I gotcha.
But I'll probably get that. It'll probably lose half of our people here. And
mm-hmm.
in other countries they'll be like, SCA is not a LARP. I assure you it is. I'm not saying that the craftsmen are not amazing and they're not masters in their craft. I think SCA is amazing for some of that stuff, but
sure.
It's still a LARP.
Sure.
But it was a busy weekend, like a surprisingly busy Labor Day weekend. Like I didn't think I was going to do as much as I did.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
I had a pretty relaxing weekend myself.
Good. I think you needed that.
Honestly, played some Minecraft.
Heck yeah.
I tried to I'm like in a massive bit of writer's block right now. I have the exact framework for what I know I want my plot to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how do I make it interesting while it's happening is the big thing for me. And
don't we have an episode on that?
We do,
Okay.
but typically part of that process is have good ideas. And I just anytime I've been trying to come up with ideas, it's just been like, no, it's just crappy ideas. So.
All right. Well, let me know if you want to kick some stuff around. You know me.
I do, but I also don't like using you as a resource because you're in my game. So it's
if it means that your game isn't running, then I'm not in your game.
No, I just need a little more time.
Okay.
I just need a little more time.
What is a little more time?
We're running in October. That's fine.
Okay.
Look, September is crap for scheduling. We already had this discussion.
We kind of did.
You were like, literally the only other weekend that's free for any of us is like the 10th, and I'm like, that's way too soon. So
I think you could still do it.
It wouldn't be good. My last game, your feedback for me was it felt rushed, and I was like, okay. Because I was kind of dealing with the same thing where like there was a lot of like writer's block where I didn't have a lot of stuff like prepared like I usually do, and I tried to wing it, and you saw it. Okay. You saw it and you felt it. So
okay.
I'm not going to a second game in a row half cocked.
Okay, all right. That's good. That's good that you've set that line for yourself.
Yeah,
still going to stay on top of you.
Okay, that's fine.
So because I care.
That's fine.
All right, it is the beginning of the month.
Yes,
this is our 101 series time. Last month we did Populating the World, where we kind of dipped our toes into what it was like to make something feel real and alive and have events and factions and politics. And now we're saying we're now stepping ourselves into creating investment with your players and characters. And again, we're dipping our toe into this. We're not going to take a huge dive into it because there's a lot, and I mean a lot, that can be said on this topic. We did a fair amount of research to try and see if we could bring it down to a level of simplicity, and I think it's still going to feel complex because of what it takes.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of our other topics, there's I don't say formulaic approaches, but like you can at least break them down to a certain amount of a scientific method where, if you're doing A, B, and C, even if you execute them poorly, you're still executing those steps, and I think you'll still get a halfway decent, response out of it. But I think when you're talking about creating investment, it's more of a vibe than anything else, and so this is a like when we started writing the show sheet out for this, like there was a lot of like, this is difficult to convey in just do this and it will happen, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's eminently harder for people who are doing one shots, or running stuff at conventions. I mean, people are not that invested. They're interested in having the experience, but like, how can you get investment in 3 hours?
Yeah,
it's challenging.
Yeah.
Like, if you got to be really good,
you need a lot of buy-in from your players,
right? And I think that's where we're gonna. I really kind of wanted to start this conversation off with is keep in mind that this is not a storyteller only thing.
Yeah,
we're gonna be bringing up topics that any of this applies and should be listened to by the players as well.
Yes, exactly.
So
exactly.
How do we always start?
Well, we always start with a definition.
All right. What is creating an investment? What is investment? What are we talking about here?
All right. So investment is basically when a player and character, I suppose, because they're for the purposes of this, player and character are kind of interchangeable.
Yes. Yes.
Kind of.
Yeah. We'll break that down a little bit more.
They're not really, but what I'm saying is the distinction between the two of them, as it pertains to this particular discussion, is not terribly relevant.
Correct.
So when a player and or a character cares about an aspect of the world, and usually this is players, be they NPCs, places, events, history, things like that. It's that sort of unquantifiable buzz about your story that like excites people to sit back at the table after each game.
Yeah, and it's also the change in tone and even sometimes the way they talk about the game. Like they start using the NPC's name instead of just saying that dude.
Yeah.
And that shows that their mind is actively working through the situation.
Right. Like I know I've got investment at my table when I mention something about an NPC and I get 3 people go, "Oh, hell no," all at once. Like, clearly you care enough to have a strong objection to whatever I just said, That's investment.
Yeah, that's investment. And I'm actually going to have to remember this as we go into discussion because it was something that I didn't include. And I'll come back to it. I can't believe it just popped into my head because you had brought up one of the things that it triggered for me immediately was stolen investment. But I'll get to that. Remind me.
Stolen investment?
Stolen investment.
Okay.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Because you did it.
I don't know what stolen investment is in reference
bring it back
but
to
I'm
me.
Excited to hear about it.
Yeah, bring it back. I'm actually going to put it in chat so I don't forget about it.
All right, cool. So now keeping in mind that like creating investment is not the same as plot hooks. Okay, plot hooks are just ways to guide your characters where the interesting parts of your story are. Okay, you're more dragging people with plot hooks.
Yes.
Whereas if you build investment, players will go there without you having to guide them.
Yes.
Because they care, because they're motivated. It creates a desire in them to pursue certain things, to act in certain ways based on certain stimuli and whatnot, and that's when you know you've got investment.
Yeah, and for me, it's something that is a little thin because you can't tangibly write it in, and you can't expect that it's just going to work. This isn't part of your story that you're going to plop together and say, yeah, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we think about it that way.
Sure.
Like, because we're invested as the storyteller because we know the story. It's our baby already.
I mean, we all write with a certain expectation of how our horror players are going to react.
Yeah.
And I think that is maybe a trap we fall into of like writing certain scenes and thinking, oh, they're going to feel this way or that way about it, and placing those expectations upon our players. And I feel like if not done correctly, you're setting yourself up for some mismanaged expectations.
Yeah, and like stepping into this next part, I'm gonna say that I didn't agree with this, and that is that I do not believe that the easiest thing is to invest during session 0, because in my mind, the first thing I think of is my players aren't even in the story yet.
Okay, so I think when I wrote baking in investment during session 0.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the exact words I wrote on this
But
page.
the thing that you wrote in was the easiest place to create investment is during session 0, and I went, no, it's not. It's not the easiest place to create it because you have to. It's a 2-part thing.
Let me rephrase.
Please do.
The easiest place to grow tomatoes is in fertile soil.
Aha, good point.
Okay? The easiest place to create investment is during your session 0. I'm not saying that you or your characters will be invested after session 0, but you're going to plant the seeds of it in your session 0. Okay? So what I mean by it is this. The clearer you define the purpose of your characters within the world and the story, okay, the clearer your vision your players will have for their place in it. Okay, the better they're going to understand what role they are playing in the story. And like this is one of the reasons why I don't like sandbox games, honestly, as a player or as a storyteller, in a lot of ways. I'm not saying I will never play in a sandbox game, Mike, because I mean I'll sit at anybody's table if they're telling a good enough story.
Right.
But like I always find sandbox games to be a little, and I'll even with video games, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I don't like Grand Theft Auto for a lot of reasons, but most because it's just like you can do anything. Cool. What should I do? Anything. Okay, this is already exhausting.
Yeah. Please give me a reason to live.
Give me a direction. Give me a purpose. Okay. Show me what the story is about, so I can lean into it.
And
right?
I think the first step of that is like a plot hook that presents something to you, but that's not investment. It's the people that wrap around that. It's the events that are part of that hook that make you want to be part of it.
But even more than that, it's kind of a what's in it for me situation, right? So you've got your plot hooks, you've got your NPCs and whatnot like that, but the clearer during a session 0, during character creation, okay, when I'm thinking about my character's backstory, when I'm thinking what part of the team or the crew I play, in relation to the other players at the table, that's where I'm building investment already, you know? So if a storyteller sits me down and says, "Hey, I'm going to be running a game. Just make an adventure." I'm going to be like, "Okay," and I'm not really going to care about who I create.
Right.
But if you sit me down and be like, "All right, so you need to create a character, and it can be anything, but the character has to be down on their luck and has to have become entangled and indebted to the Thieves Guild in the country's capital city for some reason. Doesn't matter if they're like a mage that was like overextended on loans trying to get some magical artifact or something like that to increase his own power, or if they're a career thief for the Thieves Guild, or if they're a fighter maybe running protection for them, or
wrongfully accused,
whatever.
Yeah.
But one way or another, you have to be indebted to the Thieves Guild so that the Thieves Guild has leverage on you.
Yep.
Suddenly I've got dozens of ideas.
Yes.
Suddenly now I care about the origins of oh God, what did my character do that got themselves in such deep trouble? And I'm thinking back to like episodes of Leverage.
Yep.
I'm thinking back to, other crime dramas and stuff like that I've seen where, criminal enterprises have gotten their hooks into very decent people. And I'm thinking of all these things.
Yep.
I'm already invested in this character.
Yep.
I'm invested just giving this example.
Yeah.
And I don't even, it's not even real.
Yep.
Yep. So for me, that's where it is. You plant the seeds of this investment during character creation. You give your players a very clear picture of what you want from them, and here's the thing: you're not going to get that investment straight out of the gate.
Right.
But what you're doing is you're jogging their thoughts on their thought process. Right.
Right.
You're making them at least think about who their character is, where they come from, what they want, and where they're maybe going to head in the future.
Right.
At least getting a trajectory out of the gate. Maybe they won't ever end up anywhere near it.
Right.
But at least they want something walking into session 1.
Yep. I agree with it. It took me the understanding of that, but I wanted to walk through that because I thought that was really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next thing that I really think of is when the world is interesting, people are interested in it. And there's often a time that little mysteries can exist around the setting itself. Like, yeah, the story is we are working for the king to find the last dragon, right? So we're talking with people, we're going on adventures, we're just trying to find the last dragon that exists, right? Because he needs it for some MacGuffin reason. So it doesn't mean that the world isn't working around them, and we won't have these, in what I like to say, the mystery or the telemundo moments.
Yeah.
And, like, where you're watching NPCs interact with each other or interact with you that is involving someone else. You know, the lover's quarrel, the doctor who is actually secretly an assassin that you found out about because you went on an adventure and he was there, taking care of a problem. And you're like, wait a second, I thought you were a doctor. Well, I wasn't always a doctor. Ooh, now there's mystery about this person.
I'm a healer, but click.
Exactly. It's those types of things that I think are great. One of the things that I read on Reddit, which I thought was a fantastic, way to incorporate interest, was a storyteller had opened a game up with Session 0 being them being these low-level adventurers taking care of a small town that was being beset by orcs and ogres. And it was a mining town that was kind of on the fringe. They had actually mined all the way through a mountain and were running from the far side of it, and we're cleaning out that side and bringing stuff back through. Well, they realized that they were not going to... The whole point was they were not going to be able to save this village. They were too small. So the village hired them, since they were already as guards, saying, you need to get us through the mountain. So that was their opening adventure, was getting the townsfolk who had remained back through the mountain. And while they're doing this, there was an existing banditry group there that had already cleared the town out of resources while all this was going on and this kind of ogre orc siege that was going on. So as they're going through this mountain, this slime ball of a dude is like, hey, looks like you need some bandages. I could sell you some.
And just so, straight up war profiteering off.
Exactly, through the whole thing. So as they're fighting, spiders and, other things that are going on, minor level things, as they're going through this mine to get these people through, this guy's just being a jerk, and he's got thugs who aren't going to rough anybody up because he knows them, but they're also never going to be able to steal from these guys because there's more of them who are definitely better fed and better taken care of. What was interesting was after he finished this part of the adventure, after, the opening adventure got them back, got these people moved on, now they're adventurers moving on from this thing and into the normal plot, he kind of got to know them. But at the very end of the game, as they're coming to the crux of the climax, he looks over and says, okay, well, did you guys have anything else on your list? And they flopped out their list of things they needed to do, and out of the 5 things, 3 were crossed off. And the big bad guy was not at the top of the list.
He was number 2.
It was the dude from the mines they wanted to go back and murder because he was such a jerk to them at the beginning. And they had his name. They knew where he was from. They had kept little notes. And he was like, that's investment. That's investment that's paid way off at the end.
Yeah.
Because, again, it was a pebble in their shoe as they walked.
And he was the memorable part of that encounter.
Of that journey.
It would have been one thing had they just okay, you're going to escort some NPCs. Oh, there's spiders in the cave.
Right.
Anyway, but when you've got this really good, really well-written NPC that fits in the setting, fits in the scenario, and has the time to build investment, have dialogue.
Yeah.
Get the players truly irritated. And good irritated, not bad. Not getting the players irritated of I don't want to play this game anymore, but that villain you love to hate.
Yeah.
That's where that investment comes from.
And for me, when I look at that, I always think of situations where you have like I said, a journey and a pebbles in your shoe, or something you come across again and again. You might go on a road trip and you always run across IHOPs, and you just decide you're going to stop at every IHOP along the way, right? That's part of those investments. Like, if you find another IHOP later, you're like, dude, we have to go to this one. Dude, we're not on the road trip anymore, but dude, it's an IHOP. We have to go to that IHOP, and see, if it's the same. And that's a thing. That's like a whole experience that gets packaged that you can't sell into the story.
I need to segue just briefly off of our discussion because something just crossed my mind, and I need to directly address the players out there.
Please do.
Okay. Because a little soapbox I like to get on every so and then is the whole idea of letting the villain monologue.
Oh yeah.
And I am a huge proponent of letting the villain monologue.
Yeah.
Okay. I always think you should let the villain monologue. And there's a lot of people who are like, well, it's just not realistic to just sit there and let him shoot his mouth off without putting an arrow through it, Like, if that's our chance, and if we all watch The Incredibles, we know you shouldn't let the villain monologue. But here's the thing, though, is that I really think as a storyteller, you are robbing yourself of a good experience. Think of how much more fun the game is when you are invested, when you are involved. And you've got strong feelings about the big bad evil guy, and you look at him as a thorn in your side rather than as an objective to be conquered.
Yes.
As a boss to just be killed and written off.
Yeah.
If you stop thinking about him in video game senses and you start thinking about him as that's my arch nemesis right there.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you're going to have a much better, much more fulfilling story experience if you let the guy run his mouth. Now, storytellers, don't stab your players in the back.
No.
Reveal some of your plans. Don't do the whole thing of, haha, you were stupid for letting me monologue, because while I was doing that, I was enacting my plan,
mm-hmm.
and I just bought myself all the time, because then you're shooting yourself in the foot, because next time they will kill him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So you monologue, you use it only for running your mouth at your players,
mm-hmm.
let it happen.
Mm-hmm. Watch some good monologues.
Everyone will be more invested. Everyone will hate your big bad evil guy all the much more for shooting his mouth off like that.
Yep.
And your story will be richer.
Yes, I agree.
Yep.
And
Sean in the live chat is posting a gif of Tony Stark hard rolling his eyes, because this was a discussion topic that he and I got into in the car the other day.
That's okay. We have microphones and they don't. My thought behind this is that you don't just have to invent this out of nowhere. You can pre-sell it with stolen investment. And this is where something we've talked about with NPCs, we've talked about with other things, and it fits with investment. And you did this exceptionally well, whether you were actively doing it or not. In our story, in your game's
sure,
story,
okay.
The last group of thugs that we had to meet with
mm-hmm.
was a Khajiit, and a woman.
Yeah.
Who had a specific look that you described in a specific way.
So this was my Molly Weasley rogue.
Correct. All of us heard that.
Uh-huh.
That is not the image that we all got, because all of us thought of Dolores Umbridge.
Oh.
I remembered it being said at the table twice. She is sweet, like Molly Weasley, but we all think that she's Dolores Umbridge, and that there's more going on there behind the scenes.
I mean, if you guys all thought she was Dolores Umbridge, that's one thing. I never used that comparison.
Right. But
I described her like a kindly soccer mom.
Correct.
Yes.
And that's the thing is that you pre-sold an image that was already in our head that it didn't fit. It was the little Susie there in the dark alley with some heavy books. Something bad's about to go down.
Yep.
Part of that is stealing from the subconscious of your players. If you know your players know, I don't know, a specific TV show or an individual very well,
mm-hmm.
there's nothing that does the sale of investment better as long as you stick to it. If you stick to the trope and you kind of fall through it, that you cannot sell someone to someone else. your NPC as something that's already in their mind. And that helps bring that investment even closer to them.
Yeah.
And I that's where I'm saying it's a stolen investment, because what you're doing is you're taking from their mind an image that they already have an inherent investment with.
Oh, I get
and
it now.
applying it to your game.
I get it now. All right. Yeah,
now,
yeah.
So they already have a history with this. If you walk in and I said, oh, you enter into the crafter's shop. And as you enter in, there's a smell of a light oil. You can hear the fires burning in the back. He comes off wiping off his hands with a goatee and a mustache that's neatly trimmed, a mop of hair, and a very arrogant, an arrogant, self-righteous kind of attitude as he comes wandering up. And and his name is Moni Hark. Your brain goes, okay. He goes, what can I do for you? You seem like you're pretty able. And you sell him like Tony Stark.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
And now your mind is already clipping on that. He's got gear for them. He's always taking care of them. The image is already stolen in their minds. The investment is already half paid for.
I gotcha.
So that's one of the things that you can do, even with locations. You can pre-sell locations. We often use images of other places to pre-sell those and to sell and so when you're trying to get a theme, that's a way to sell investment of a theme. That feeling like if I bring up Castlevania, your brain already has an image of what things look like. Like you've got a feeling, you know how dark it is, you know the kind of horrors that are there. That's the feeling. If I explain that the overgrowth in the place seems as if no one has been inside of this facility for years, it feels like Portal. Oh, okay.
Now I know, yeah.
You also start getting the feelings that sit behind that. How much of the technology is still alive?
Yeah.
Is there an AI possibly here? If I sell the AI with it, boom.
Yep.
So all of that is stolen from the minds of your players. It takes a little extra effort to hear that and to know your players well enough to do that. But it's there.
Yeah, I was gonna say it also heavily depends on them knowing the pop culture reference.
Well, and that's the listening part.
I'm very keen on Knox in the box in the in the live chat. Anytime we make pop culture references here, this is an 8 out of 10 chance that he goes, no, never seen it.
On the other hand, if I'm running an adventure game, there's lots of references that I can use.
That's true.
And that's the thing is that your players at your table will help you through their own table chatter.
Yeah.
So sometimes it pays to listen. But the other thing is that in times, players will hand you some things.
Oh, sure.
They'll give you some backstory. They'll give you things that connect with their characters. Now, I will flat out say a lot of players ignore their backstories after even session 3.
Oh, sure. And we were talking earlier, and you made a really great point that stuck with me. It's like a lot of players never even get involved in their backstories because they're so focused on the story that the storyteller puts forth that they're not looking backwards at their own backstory. You know, and even characters who genuinely care about their backstories will forget about it. Just simply because you put enough dragons in front of them and they're like, oh, yeah, shit, we got to deal with these dragons. And
well, it's their history. It's not their current.
Exactly. But mining a character's backstory and their history and stuff like that if they're going to hand it to you, it's free investment, right? Because the moment you dig something out of there and put it into the story, they're going to be like, oh, hey, this is from my thing, And like I said, investment's all about what's in it for me. You hand them something that they wrote, instant investment. I did this in my game. The Mad Elf's character, Tristan. He wrote in his backstory that he came from a small village up in the Highlands that was destroyed by a bandit. Unbeknownst to him, I had already written this bandit plot that we were already rolling into by the time he joined the game, and I was like, what if I gave you the name of the bandits that destroyed your thing? And he was like, okay, sure. And I said, so I gave him the name of one of them. He ran into that particular person. It definitely drove his motivations quite a bit going through there. He got to visit the ashes of his old village in the pursuit of this bandit. And then at the very end, this particular bandit seized power from the big bad evil guy and became the new big bad evil guy. So he got a final boss battle with him,
which is fantastic.
Which is fantastic, and it was a great experience for him. So
One of the things that that came up after we actually finished the show sheet was I was reading through comments about something else, about starting a game, and someone was talking about how they set the world and everything. They knew roughly what their plot was going to be, but then told the players, before you create your characters, here are the 3 scenarios that you will open into.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was, you are captured on your it was a sci-fi. You are captured on your ship. Bandits have taken your ship. So I need to know who the crew is. You guys are going to create your crew. You're going to tell me how you guys got captured and what the situation is.
Okay.
To open the investment.
Yeah.
Like basically pre-paint the story of all the events that occurred up to them being locked up in their own wherever.
Sure.
Of their own ship.
There's your session 0 seating. Yeah.
Correct. And I was like, okay, that's fantastic. I said, so like the other 2 was just like, you are left on a planet with your ship leaving with the bandits in it.
Mm-hmm.
You're literally watching them leave.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what brought you to this moment, and who are all of you? So like maybe some of your crew, some of your passengers, right? But you're left on a planet.
Sure.
And then the last one was, you're finally buying back your ship from bandits with the last pennies that you're all able to scrounge together. How did you get the money to get to this point?
Okay.
And who's handing over the money?
Yeah.
And it was like, those are great, because it makes the whole table have to work and come up with whatever this is. Now the adventure starts from here. Like, that's done.
Right.
Whatever
Got
that is paid for.
Niska's money. You'll never see us again. Got it. Better for everybody.
Exactly. And he said, it took 2 session zeros for us to finish because everybody was talking so much they never made their characters in the first session.
Yeah.
And that's what you want.
That's great. That's great.
They were like, this is great, because they read the synopsis for what the game was going to be, and it had nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, I thought I was just going to be like a soldier who's okay. Well, I guess I could do something else, and everybody just shifted gears.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
I loved that as an idea. So again, investment can happen at session 0 or even prior if you can prepare your story for that and understand that backstory is backstory and story is story.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can move forward from that. The stuff that happens in-game tends to happen organically. And I think there is a few times when you've done, in your story, that you've done this very well.
Yeah, okay.
I think that the one that you brought up that was totally organic was Helgrid.
Yeah. So Helgrid was you got involved with the cult of Meridia, the Daedric Prince of Light and Purity, the Lady of Infinite Energies, and Helgrid was a cultist, essentially, who worshipped Meridia in the town of Skingrad.
Yes.
You had gone to the Thieves Guild and said, hey, I know you guys have connections. I'm looking to get in touch with the cult of Meridia here. Can you put me in touch with somebody?
Yep.
And so they kind of chaperoned the meetup just to make sure that you weren't doing something shady.
Right. Which didn't. Actually, it was a lovely meetup.
It was a lovely meetup.
Ended up with some nice tea at the end.
And Helgrid was just a nice young lady who just had wonderful things to say about this Daedric Prince.
Yeah.
You had a very positive experience with her and stuff like that. And then the very next game session opened with the Thieves Guild kicking down your door.
Yeah.
Demanding to know what you did with Helgrid.
Which was fantastic for me.
Because she had been abducted.
Yeah.
And you were like the last person to have been seen with her. So
Yep.
They were more or less fishing for information, but
that whole scene, that whole live action of that scene was fantastic in the way that it role played out.
Yeah,
we had a lot of fun with it. I think it was great.
But worth noting that like Helgrid became a major focus of the plot. I'll say a major focus of the plot. I don't know if those are quite the right terms, but she became very important to it. She became a MacGuffin.
Yes, she did. She became a MacGuffin.
She became a MacGuffin within the plot. Organically, like I did not have Helgrid written. She was not an NPC I had set aside at all. I didn't know you were going to ask, the Thieves Guild about the Cult of Meridia or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it made perfect sense that you did, but I had to come up with her on the fly. And suddenly she became this really important character that was kind of being used as a pawn between you guys and the bad guys,
And what was even better about all of that was as we became more invested in her, you made sure all the other NPCs wrapped around her.
Yeah.
You made the bad guy, one of the primary antagonists, interested in her in a way, but still left it malleable to the story.
Yep.
You made one of our NPCs that were important to us from the Thieves Guild very interested in her and why she even would care about this individual in such a deep way. And we never got the hard depth behind it.
No.
Because it wasn't necessary. We never dug for it.
Yeah.
But it was clearly palatable and there. And then as we exploited that, or to a degree within the story, it paid off. And it felt like it always paid off, as if it had always been there.
Right. One of the great things that Helgrid did for me in my story was, and this is one thing I always try to do to help build investment is anytime you've got a group or a faction, organization, any group of people that is larger than like 4 people, right? I always try to give them a face.
Yes.
I have one NPC that essentially represents that organization, and I make them essentially the face of the organization. If you're going to deal with that organization, you're always going to deal with this one NPC.
Right.
And that works for your villains as well. So in this particular plot, the primary antagonist, Yorda, Yorda Foecrusher, had been essentially kidnapping people and then turning them into blood fiends, which are just like insane baby vampires.
Sure.
They're overcome with their bloodlust, and they're nothing more than just ravenous ghouls, basically.
Right.
And she was using those because they were more destructive, and she wanted the chaos. And so when Helgrid was abducted, that allowed me to put a face on the blood fiends for you, and it worked wonderfully.
Yeah.
Because like one of the next game sessions, you went immediately down into the sewers to try to clear out this nest of vampires, basically, and hopefully to find Yorda while you were down there. And you like nuked 9 or so blood fiends.
Right.
You never asked what their names were. You never asked for a physical description. They were just pawns on the board for you.
Right.
And that's fine. That's how I wrote them. Like that is not saying you guys did anything wrong.
And to say
because
this,
I presented them that way.
Right, you presented them that way, and as players, we did ask if there was any way we could redeem them, and you were like, no. You know that they are fully infected.
Yeah. These ones are beyond help. But what you did though was you found Helgrid. She'd only been abducted like the day before, so the vampirism hadn't had a time to like set in fully.
Yeah.
And you were able to cure her.
Yeah.
Get her back to the surface.
Yep.
And get her back into people who could take care of her.
Yep.
And that really was a victory for you. You rescued one NPC you had met like the game session before, but because you had a name, because you had a face, rescuing that one person represented rescuing someone from the blood fiends.
Right.
Suddenly the blood fiends were redeemable.
Yeah.
Even
1
if it
in
was just
10
that one.
is still 1 in 10.
Yeah.
And the other part of that was you then took that player investment of we did this and let's make this feel great and told us flat out, you will be rewarded for this. This is important. And the next session, it was rewarded to us in the way that we presented to the citizens that we found the others, and they accepted that highly. And took it. But not only that, it gave us a reputational leverage with somebody in the Thieves Guild. And that paid off even greater.
Yes.
Story-wise, emotionally, it was great.
Yes, absolutely.
All of that went exceptionally well.
Absolutely. All from an NPC that I invented on the fly because you made an off-the-wall request.
Yep. And it's things like that to listen for when your players ask for something, that you're helping to move into those situations so that you are prepared for that level of investment. I think the other is the listening to reactions. For instance, in my game, I had your character, Ravana, meet up, well, the whole entire group did, with doubles of themselves, basically people who have been going around and masquerading as you for a period of time and using your good charity and name.
Yeah, there was a prophecy that one day we would return, and somebody thought, oh, this is just a stupid prophecy, and it doesn't say when they're going to return. Let's pretend to be them, and we can be local celebrities.
And it worked out for them very well until you showed up.
Until we showed up, yeah.
Yeah. Like, we already got some. They're very nice. And you're like, what? But what was interesting was when your doppelganger showed up, instead of just immediately fighting them and throwing down, you were like, hey, those are really nice boots. You basically sized each other up in fashion sense. And you're like, do we need to even do this?
No, I don't see why we need to fight. You were doing a job. We showed up. You didn't know we were going to show up. I don't see if there's any harm or foul there.
And literally, like, she tipped her hat to you and took off.
Yeah.
And fantastic enough was gone. And I looked at that and I said, okay, I planned on reusing these characters, but I didn't know who'd have investment on them. And really only 2 of you took investment. And I was going to use her again later, and I needed to figure out what was the best way to present that continuation of story. And so I knew she would not have as much value to you, but her story might. And so I presented to her, back to you, dead. I presented her being murdered by someone, which in itself wasn't a big deal, but she handed you a choice. She basically said, like, effectively, go find my lover and the child who believes I'm coming home.
Tell Marco I'm sorry I lied to him, I believe was her
exactly
words. Yeah.
And you're like, oh crap, now I have to go take care of something.
Yeah.
For someone that I was kind of nice to a month ago.
Right. But, like,
shit, you know.
Ravana's a very simple person, and the idea that someone would be killed in such a brutal manner like that is just like, no one deserves that. So whatever her final wish is, like, I have to do it, you know?
Right. And I saw that investment. I said, very well. And I continued that story. I had ideas for it, but literally I wanted to see where it was going to expose from.
Sure.
And you bit into it hard.
Oh yeah,
which was great.
Super invested in Marco and Madeline and like all those NPCs you've introduced me along that plot line, and I think it's phenomenal.
And the thoughts behind that all came from you saying, my character has no connection to this world.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm going to show you the investment that someone else made that is now your choice to decide if it's your problem or not. And so far, there's only one person who knows otherwise.
Yeah. And you were right in that, because when you heard me say my character has no investment to this world, you handed me something to bite on, and like a drowning person searching for, you know, a life preserver, you tossed me one flotation device and I grabbed it, you know? And yeah, I mean, I grabbed onto it real hard. It's what she needed, it's what I needed as a player, and it's been a great plot so far. So
yeah. So let's wrap this a little bit and talk about, like, what can we do to capitalize on this? How can we bring this down to a level to actually be able to make it useful?
Sure. Okay. Well, okay. First off, I think, like, players, like we were saying earlier, players show you what they care about. Okay. You used the example earlier of I say earlier when we were talking, when we were putting together these show notes, of dropping a quarter on the floor and hoping that somebody notices and picks it up.
Yes.
Like, you can't just do that with players. You have to drop sometimes you have to drop multiple quarters. But not everybody's motivated by quarters. So sometimes you need to drop a couple of quarters, you need to drop a couple of stuffed animals, you need to drop a kitten, you need to, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You need to
bloody
drop
knife,
a whole bagged lunch,
yeah, exactly.
You know, some salt and pepper chips, you know, and see who picks what up, because each player is going to get invested in your story through different means. They're going to be all motivated by different parts of your story, but noticing what catches whose eye at your table, okay? And this is kind of what, like, at the very beginning of this podcast, I said that a lot of this is vibe based, and this is really where it gets vibe based, okay? Is noticing when your players are trying to tell you what they're actually interested in.
Yeah.
It's watching when you describe something or you bring forth an NPC, watching that one player over on the side of the table light up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly now they're listening. They perk up and they want to talk to this NPC. That's their way of telling you, like, this is a cool NPC. I like them.
Mm-hmm.
You know? If a player gets really angry about your villain or something like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
We had Count Hasseldor.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I had you guys invested in this character when first off, he lives at the end of last arc.
Yeah.
You guys thought you were done with him.
Yeah.
But one of our characters, invited him to come to the Land of Apocrypha with you.
Yeah.
And so when the Archmage of your Mages Guild announced that the first expedition would be starting, here's how you guys would be going over there and establishing the base camp, and you've created this magical artifact that will allow you to find things, and good news, Count Hasseldor will be coming with you on the very first expedition. 3 of you issued a curse word.
Mm-hmm.
All in unison.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great.
Yeah.
I started glowing at that moment because I knew you cared enough to be swearing out loud at the mention of his name.
Yep.
And the implication of his presence.
Yep. Yeah. And that's when you know.
Yeah.
And where you put stars next to it, you accept it, you move through it.
Yes.
But you listen to how your players want to move through it.
Yes.
Because that's now the story.
Yeah.
That's where you put it. Now, we're not saying change your plot. We're saying that's now part of the story.
You should find a way to make more of that story matter.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something like, okay, did you have written in your notes that like an NPC that you haven't specified is going to give them certain information now? Okay, well, can that information come from the NPC they care about?
In some way.
Sure. They decide one random NPC is a real jerk. Okay, cool. Can you make that jerk NPC now involved in the bigger plot, involved in their bigger problem?
Right.
You know, are there ways you can tie it back? Is there something that NPC can do to keep themselves involved in the plot? Is there a critical thing that they can offer, a piece of equipment or whatever? You know, even if it's not part of the main plot, can they get themselves more involved?
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. And a lot of times it could be somebody that they care about. It could be someone that they loathe. It could be someone that they have respect for. It could be someone who has respect for them. But it has to be that interaction point that they constantly return to. And most people are pretty simple.
Yeah.
They're just looking to help. They're just looking to assist. They're just looking to impress. And those are the feelings that you go with when you're working with these people. For instance, they find an annoying kid who's constantly following them, and they constantly bring up that this kid is following them or looking for them. Great. He goes missing, like from the group. You just don't bring him up for a few days. Mm-hmm. And then you have one of your trusted people say that they saw a new scout in the ranks of your big bad evil guy. Mm-hmm. They're not too sure, but he seems to be a young lad. Goes by the name of, of Jamie, and you're like, Jamie? Wait, short, dark hair, green eyes, really annoying voice? Yeah. Yeah, we know Jamie. Mm-hmm. And suddenly the investment is palpable.
Yeah.
Like, you don't hate that kid.
Yeah.
But now you're worried. Like, why is he doing that? Is he still friends with you? Is he still trying to get good? Or is he now turning you over?
Yeah. There's a palpable difference between the big bad evil guy has a new henchman, and the big bad evil guy has a henchman you know.
Yeah.
I think it was it's a phrase I learned a long time ago. It was like something about knowing the name of the guy trying to break your face that makes it so much more personal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just thug number 7 who's trying to kill you. It's Bob.
Yeah.
Hi, Bob.
Yeah. And what's worse is like when an NPC who you haven't met approaches you and knows the names of all of your characters and has respect for them, is just like, I'm sorry I have to do this. Mm-hmm. My boys are going to rough you up tonight. Why? I can't have you going into that dungeon tomorrow. It just can't happen.
Yep.
Jamie, let me know about everything. Please don't even try and reach for your daggers. Please don't. I'm going to rough you up tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And tomorrow, you're going to need to recover. Why don't you just recover? And, like, that sells on a whole different level.
Yeah.
That you just got sold out by a friend.
Yep. Exactly. Do we want to address forcing investment?
Yeah, I think it kind of follows under the same thing as railroading.
Yeah.
Like, you have to let your tables find it.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think railroading you can do.
Well, you can.
You can force your players into a plot, into a situation. You can't force a player into investment. You can't force a player to have a certain emotional reaction.
No.
And I think that's like, we care very deeply about it. And I know I've written in my notes in the past, not nearly so much in modern days, but I know I have written in the past of, like, this will make the players angry.
Yeah.
This will make the players care about this NPC. And I'm always stunned when it didn't happen, know? Like, oh, why don't they care about this NPC? I wrote it right here in my notes, Yeah. I did the thing, they just don't care.
Yeah.
But sometimes your players just aren't in the same headspace as you are, and you can't make them have an emotional reaction.
Right. And that presents its own levels of issues, but if you can catch the names or the feelings or the attitudes towards individuals that your players do attach to, you can use that and come back to it. And that's where that inspiration for you should regrow.
Right. Just this is like where you do have to pay attention to the vibe at the table, and then just try to lean into that and exploit what's already blossoming there, rather than trying to create it ex nihilo yourself.
Right. But I think early on, if you set those expectations with your group, you have a much better chance of saying, like, if you start out your table by saying, I want to role play in this game. I think the mechanics for D&D are great and everything for being able to fight things, but I'd like everyone to be role playing and involved in the story and the NPCs that I'm presenting to you. So that sets the expectation of what the story is and where it's going. And if your players aren't up for that, if they just want a straight up dungeon romp, then where your level of investment needs to be.
Well, that was like one of the big parts of the move to Savage Worlds for me, is because I didn't want to run a high combat, high lethality game. In fact, we're playing with the Heroes Never Die setting rule.
Yeah.
Where if you're a wild card, it's almost impossible for you to die unless you deliberately say this. Yeah, I feel like my character would die here.
Yeah.
And then it's a voluntary choice.
Then it's like, it's not like, oh, well, you said that, you're dead. No, it's still like, okay, how do you want to handle this?
Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's see how this fits into the story, because that's the type of story that I want to tell. I'm not interested in the stakes of lethality. I'm interested in seeing what happens with characters as they all interact and explore these events that unfold and these dangers that present themselves. And we had a discussion. We were hanging out with Steve at his place, and the idea of going into the Oblivion realm of Apocrypha came up, and Steve's kind of reaction to that was like, "Oh God, we're all gonna die," and I'm like, "That's not the type of game we're playing at all." Like, you get that, right? Like, we're playing with the Heroes Never Die special rule. Like, I almost can't kill you by the agreed upon rules. You're not gonna die in Apocrypha. And he went, oh, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. And besides, your character thinks he's going to be killed by a dragon. What do you think? There's no dragons in Apocrypha.
Right. Like, I mean, we may be dragging some people out from bad situations that might occur.
But it was setting that expectation of, like, you can go there. You can have an adventure there. Like, you don't need to fear the lethality of it, because it's just not the type of game that we're playing.
It's not the story.
Feel free to get invested in it, is essentially what I was saying to him. Of like, get past your fear. Your fear is not the thing you need to have in the forefront. Right. Roll up your sleeves, and allow yourself to have some fun with this and feel some different emotions about it.
Yep. And this kind of goes out to the players in this, is that give yourself permission to explore the story.
Yes.
Your storyteller may be dropping dimes or stuffed animals or anything along the way, and you may be hesitant to step into it. You may be hesitant to explore part of the story because it might expose things. don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's a choose your own adventure.
Well, not just that, but I mean, a lot of new players are going to be timid about like, oh, I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to act goofy because what if I look silly while I'm role playing?
Right.
What if I'm doing a silly voice and it sounds funny to everybody else and they're all chuckling? We're all self-conscious.
Yeah.
Well, most of us are self-conscious.
You get less as you move on through it.
You do, but like,
not everybody's Robin Williams face.
Yeah, and not everybody's a trained voice actor. I mean, we all watch, a lot of us watch Critical Role and stuff like that, and we get very intimidated by the fact that these are professionals, and we don't want to like try to do a funny voice because, for our characters, because like, oh, what if I'm not a professional? Who cares?
Yeah,
nobody cares. Like just get involved. It's fine. We're all there to have fun, and
right.
even if you like. Look at Sam Riegel, first episode of campaign 2 of Critical Role, man. He did the voice for his character, and everybody looked at him and went, "Oh God, is that the voice you're using?"
Mm-hmm.
And he owned it. He was like, "It's gonna be hundreds of episodes like this, guys. Buckle up."
Yeah, and look. This is interesting because it's just put in there.
Yeah,
Noxus said, "I also don't know what kind of butterfly effect my actions are going to have for these games." Do it. Find out.
That's the story.
That's the story.
Storytelling is a trust fall.
Yes.
You have to trust that your storyteller is not just going to be like, haha, you chose wrong, your character dies, and you're stupid, get out of my house.
Yeah.
It's not going to be like that.
No. And if it is, don't hang out with that storyteller.
Exactly. Most storytellers are interested in telling a good story. As they should be interested in telling a good story.
Correct.
Rather than, unless you're doing something blatantly stupid and suicidal and completely unadvisable, and most storytellers will try to hint that, of like, you sure you want to do that?
It's a stormy night on eel-infested waters, and you're going to dive in the water.
Are you sure?
The sails are torn. There's lightning bolts striking. Are you really sure you're going to want to do this?
Yeah.
Your character is unsure and literally looking at you in the fourth wall going, please don't make me jump.
Most storytellers are going to do that. Okay, so especially like at my table, if you did something even foolish or brash or bold, inventive, out of left field, out of the box, whatever you want to call it, like, I'm going to have fun thinking about what the implications of it are, and we're all going to tell a very interesting story about it.
Yeah.
Like, finding out what the butterfly effect of your actions are is actually the good part.
Yeah.
But you just need to trust that your storyteller isn't going to just hammer nails into you about it.
Yeah, and that the other people at your table are going to move with you on it.
Yep.
And that just takes doing it and the trust of moving through it.
Yeah.
So.
And understandably, that's a learned skill.
Yeah.
That's a learned skill for players, But I think we're getting a little off topic here. But
I'm not going to go too far because one of the things that I want to say was like how some of these have been accepted. Like one of the ones that you made up was that not all players are going to pick up your dimes and run with them like everyone else.
Sure.
And sometimes it's a matter of full conversation. You had this conversation with Vicky in regards to your game for her character. She is not someone who immediately dives into hard plot. She'll usually sit back, listen, watch, experience. She's reactive.
Yeah.
But she's not actively engaged.
I described her a lot like having a cat at the table, which is ironic because she's playing a Khajiit. That she's like the type of player who's going to be quiet and sleep for 18 hours a day over in the corner and probably ignore you.
Mm-hmm.
But every so and then she will come over, she will meow loudly,
mm-hmm.
she will bat at the laser pointer that you're shining at her, and then she'll go back to sleeping for 18 hours, you know? She's very much like that as a player in that she's very go with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have a lot of opinions, but sometimes her character does have a strong enough opinion that her character will speak up.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. She gets involved, but she doesn't actively seek the limelight in a lot of ways. She's just very content to play a very supporty role in the group.
Mm-hmm.
I had a conversation with her and asked her, like, do you want me to bring your character's backstory in? And we talked about what your backstory is, but how involved do you want it to be? And she was very hesitant. She was like, I don't think I need the whole, everybody focusing on me thing. And I was like, all right, you want just like a B plot? Like, a little snippets of your backstory kind of get involved, but it's never going to take the limelight. It's never going to be the main focus of everybody. She's like, yeah, that sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
So last game we threw a bunch of Khajiit ninjas in there, and she had a blast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I thought it was great, and it literally could just drift away at any time.
Yep.
Not a big deal.
Yep.
In my game, I've got a character, or I've got a player who likes to be there for the story, likes to be his character, but doesn't really invest in anything that gets set out. And it doesn't mean that he's not going to be there for the scenes. He's definitely there for the scenes, and that's what I present to him. Is I'll present moments to him where he's allowed to pull forward what he wants and present it in the scene, and I encourage it in the scene, and when the scene closes, great.
Yep.
And they move on.
Yep.
And it's not a matter of trying to even create a moment in an adventure or a bunch of story. It can be some simple dialogue even that adds weight to the scene. For instance, him bringing up his heraldry was a point of error, and people are like, oh, well, that person's already in the city. You should go look them up. And give him the option. He did. I was like, great. There's a bit of investment that I'm going to have pay off.
Yeah, cool.
But, pardon me. But the point is that the reference point that you give for each character, or for each player, is going to be a little bit different. And you have to be prepared for their level of investment, and when they pick up that investment, you move with them on it.
Yes. Yes.
And that's really what I'm saying there. So players, listen for your moments. Work with your storyteller.
And when they try to toss you something, don't be afraid to bite on it.
Yeah, go enjoy it.
Yeah, go enjoy it.
So, we do have a lot of questions. But they're from Nevin. He hammered our questions, and I think they're great.
Oh my god, yeah, there's like 8 of them here?
I think there's 8.
Oh,
some of these we already went over, but some of these I think we can do simple answers to kind of wrap things, which I think is great.
Absolutely.
So pick one.
All right, well, we'll start from the top here.
Sure.
How do you help players define their expectations and investment?
Session 0.
Session 0, but I mean, more than Session 0, I think you should have continuous conversations with the mod character.
Yeah.
I've spoken about this a lot in previous casts. I think you should always be talking to your players, talk about what they want, talk about how they feel, talk about what they like, what they don't like, and stuff like that.
Yeah, we're not playing secret games.
Yeah.
This is a co-op storytelling session.
Yeah.
Make it co-op.
Yep.
Discuss it. Keep going.
Define their expectations and keep defining their expectations.
Yeah, because things will change.
Yep.
Things will totally change. They'll get different ideas. What is the difference between players' investment and characters' one?
I kind of said at the beginning, I don't think that there's a meaningful distinction between the two.
I agree.
I think you will run into situations where a player will say, oh, God, I really want to see how this turns out. And don't get me wrong, Ravana doesn't give a crap. But Sarah is deeply invested here.
Yeah. So, like, and that's the thing is that, like, and you may be invested in somebody else's thing or even something else that's going on. So it's like, don't take my disinterest as character. I'm interested. Like, I'm eating popcorn over here while Ravana's disgusted with this whole situation. Please keep feeding me the popcorn. Like, I want to see what this scene turns into.
I think I don't think you'll ever see the opposite of it. Like, you'll see a character invested in something that the player isn't.
No, I don't think that'll ever happen. I couldn't imagine that feels tedious.
Yeah.
Like, I have to farm for 16 hours to get this thing. Well, I'm invested.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in tabletop games.
Yeah, like I said, I think investment's almost more of a player thing. I don't think the difference between character investment and player investment is meaningful.
Yeah.
At all.
The one thing that comes to mind where I could see that being an issue is literally in the new Expectations of 7th Sea 2nd edition, where where you have to invest in a story to complete it in so many things to get something at the end. So as a player, like, your character's invested to get this thing, and now you have to finish 5 story points to get the thing you want.
Yeah, I feel like though, because it's something you select, it should be something you care about.
And that's what I'm saying is that even in that situation, work with your damn player.
Yeah.
Like, make it something that they want.
Yeah.
And then work through that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't just grind. That is not the point of this.
Should I focus first on player's investment or character investment? We kind of already touched on that. They're really the same thing.
Same thing. I don't think you should try and focus on one or the other.
I mean, I would say I definitely want to focus more on a character just in general.
Yeah.
You're telling a story about those characters.
Right.
And so dropping things that the characters are going to be more invested in is more important than dropping a thing a player is going to be invested in, because that's almost metagamey to drop things for the players.
And not only that, but yeah.
But keeping in mind that every character is just a sock puppet that the player has their hand up.
Well, and to say that, the other thing is one of the things you always say is keep it in game.
Yeah.
Talk to your players as their characters.
Yeah.
That keeps the story as the important thing, and it doesn't get into slapsticky, oh, we're playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in another world.
Mm-hmm.
And you start using those trope words and things like that where it has no relevance.
Yeah.
So, what is the difference between short and long-term motivation?
All right, so we talked about this a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
When we were reading over the questions, and I want to just draw the distinction that the word motivation, like realizing that this is being this question is being asked on the tail end of a question of a show about investment,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I want to make sure that we're not using motivation interchangeably with investment, because they're not really the same thing.
Right.
Motivation is more like your plot hook sort of stuff. You don't necessarily have to feel invested in a motivation.
Mm-hmm.
But it does help.
Yeah.
But the difference between like short and long term for me is like a short term motivation is just a stimulus. Like it's the goblins attacking you are going to motivate you to do something, fight back or flee or whatever, and that like that short term motivation is going to last exactly until the stimulus is gone. And you're going to kind of stop caring about it after that. Long-term motivation, these are the things that you are going to be invested in, I think are the long-term motivations.
Right.
They're going to, like, and this is kind of coming back to, like, why I say, like, let your villains monologue. Because it's going to create that long-term motivation,
Yeah.
The long-term motivation, if you get your characters and if your players invested in this, are going to be the ones who write that name on their shit list.
Yeah.
like you were talking about earlier,
It's
end of the game, we're ready to face off with the big bad evil guy, but first we have to go get that jerk in the tunnels.
Yeah. Short-term motivation is the goblins are attacking the town. Long-term motivation is, was Mirabelle taken? Where is she? Is she okay?
Is she okay? Yeah.
There's your long-term motivation, because now you can be like, you can't find her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, now you want to go figure out what happened.
Right.
And follow that level of motivation. Anytime you have that, that's your players motivated by some level of investment.
Yes.
So
agreed.
And you may not know how deeply they're invested. But you cannot force the investment. You can force motivation.
Yeah. Forcing motivation is essentially just an aggressive plot hook.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And I think that's the key difference there. And short-term motivation is often forced.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. So as a new GM, what type of motivation should I bring forward in my story, and what type should I avoid? I think as a new GM, I would be very focused on goal-oriented, tangible motivations. Go to place, get MacGuffin, bring back, get coin. That's things that can be done in an objective sense that have a yes or no completion to them. I think are things that a new GM should focus on.
Yes, you will get much more satisfaction from your players and yourself.
Well, there's also far less unpredictability. Like, go to place. Okay, there's not really a lot of flexibility in that.
Right.
We have to go to the dungeon because the MacGuffin's in the dungeon.
Correct.
And then when you either have the MacGuffin or you don't.
Yep.
And then you either bring it back or you don't. There's not a lot of wiggle room there. Now, your players will always, surprise you here and there. But But for a new GM, that keeps things very on rails for you, so that you don't have to improv a lot, you don't have to think of a lot of contingencies, you don't have to think of a lot of different moving parts, multiple NPCs with multiple changing motivations and stuff like that.
Relationships,
Go to
family,
place, get thing, bring thing back, get coin. Super simple.
Yep.
And you can tell some great stories with it.
Yep.
Once you start getting a feel for storytelling, once you start getting a feel for the group you're storytelling to, things like that, yeah, absolutely, you should branch out into things that are political, things that are social, where your motivation is a little more wishy-washy, and your your success factors are more ephemeral.
Yeah,
Is
like
maybe the word?
For instance, you might. The other thing that I always like to say is watch where the family circle, the trust circle, expands to.
Yeah.
And trust is something relative. It doesn't mean that the person's good, bad, or indifferent. It's are they trusted? And that's where you can start making changes, because you don't affect the players. You're never going to capture a player's character and keep it held hostage so the other players have to come after it. That's not part of anything that's going to give you any permanent. Even though they're invested, you could do that at certain points in the story when the story calls for it. But in truth, it is so much easier for you to just have someone who is trusted on this side say, this just happened.
Yeah.
And now you have an investment that is leading to something else.
Yeah. Yep.
And it doesn't have to be negative. It can be positive. And those are the things that shift scenes. For instance, if your players are very interested while you're doing these, dungeon runs about the baker and his soon-to-be wife and them getting married, like, shift one of your scenes to their wedding. Why not? Like, they meet someone there or are introduced even there.
Yeah, sure.
There's nothing that says that you can't do that so that the investment pays off.
Right.
In the end. And that's what we're talking about with keeping it within and to move the story forward. So
next question. How do I, the GM, get involved in my own story without destroying my player's investment?
You don't.
Straight up,
We're just going to say that right now. If you're asking, should I play a character in my own game, the answer is no. You are every NPC and the world and everything else. Your time is already spent. I'm sorry. Do not do this.
Yep.
There are systems for this. They are totally different co-op designs. In what we're talking about, this is not something you should do.
The DM NPC is never a good idea.
In literally 20 plus years of my gaming, I have never once, not a single time, seen a successful DMPC.
Yep.
Not once.
Yep.
And I've played a lot of dumb games.
And just to kind of touch on this a little more, you'll hear a lot of horror stories about like the self-insert, power fantasy sort of thing. The thing that you don't want to do is, and this is the danger that like the DMPC runs, is making your players spectators in their own game.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay, you want the story to remain very centered around the characters. The characters in their stories, their motivations, their actions, their investments, and everything like that. The moment you bring in the DMPC and you try to get involved in stuff like that, you run the risk of then making it about the character that you're bringing in, and now suddenly they all have to sit there and watch you write fan fiction about your awesome OC. And that's basically it.
Yeah.
You're just writing fan fiction out loud at that point.
Yeah. I mean, if that's already okay, then go ahead and rock on, but you're not playing a game anymore.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
I'm in the middle of a game session, and the players or characters are not at all invested in the story. How can I involve them on the fly?
Again, this is a vibe check. I would say, looking at the choices they make, how they interact with your world, who they're interacting with in your world, and kind of draw lines between those, and include those individuals more deeply in your story. If you find that one person is like, oh, I'm going to go seek out this NPC. Okay, clearly that they need that NPC, they want that NPC in some way, so is there an investment there? Is there something you can exploit? Can you use that NPC more in your story? Can you give that PC just even a little more airtime? NPC a little more airtime? Just Give them an extended scene where they role play with them a little bit. Build that character up a little, and you'll find just those little things. If you're paying attention, your players will tell you what they care about.
Mm-hmm.
Exploit that.
Yeah, and don't kill things to make a point. Like, if they're interested in an NPC,
oh god,
don't have your big bad evil guy just murder them.
Yeah,
that totally changes the whole flavor, and your players will no longer trust you as a storyteller.
They won't. They will stop allowing themselves to care about things.
Yeah,
because if it's just going to get destroyed by them the moment it shows up.
Yeah. And I think that my brain started down a path from what you were talking about, and then I just it dissolved into nothingness.
Buddy, that happens to me all the time, man.
But that's what I was going to say. Sometimes your players are not going to be involved. Sometimes the day is long. Sometimes the pizza is heavy. Sometimes their lives just don't allow them the bandwidth to do anything other than roll dice and murder some goblins or have a light laughing fest at something.
Sure.
A session can be low energy. Vibe check before you get started.
Oh, yeah.
So that you know.
The Mad Elf is super good at doing that.
I mean, he does that for a living.
Yeah. I mean,
he vibe checks life.
He vibe checks life. He's like, how you doing? And I'm not just asking, like, how are we today? And we know we can give him the full, honest answer. You know? And we have had full game sessions where it's like, I am also low energy. Let's just play a little mouse guard to see where this goes. And we're like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes we go up. Sometimes we stay at that level.
Lo-fi mouse guard and chill.
Yeah,
it's
and
like...
it happens.
Yeah.
And that's okay. As long as you set the level and vibe of where everyone's at, do it.
Yeah, whatever.
Change up your story a little bit if you need to.
Not every game session needs to be like super serial all the time,
Yeah, that's true. All right. Last one.
After a game session, how can I prepare the investment for the next session?
Vibe check at the door.
Vibe check at the door. Exactly.
Yeah.
We talk about roses and thorns, wishes and rose or wishes and stars.
Yeah, wishes and stars.
The what did you like? What did you not like? What could I do better as a storyteller? Sort of thing.
What do you want to see?
Yeah, and one question I've been adding in is what would you like to see happen next game session?
Especially when they're right there, still in their mind about the story.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like, oh man, I saw that one bandit got away from us. I want to find out what happens with him, and I want to track him down. Okay.
All right.
You have just told me that you care, that you are invested in the fate of that bandit.
Yep.
I might ask a follow-up question. Do you want to kill him? Are you just trying to have a conversation with him? Why do you care so much about that one bandit? Because, I need answers. I need answers. Just so much senseless violence. I want to know why he did this. Okay, you want to talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Now I know.
Yeah.
You have told me you have investment in that character. You told me that it would be an enjoyable scene for you to be able to have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Awesome. I know exactly what I need to write, what scene I need to write for next session. I know what I need to think about. And
that brings up an interesting point of you vibe checked me with those same thugs.
Yep.
That the vampire was using. We never fought them. We didn't have to. Mm-hmm. Because I had flat out stated as my character that I probably wasn't going to. They're just doing a job.
Yep.
They're not there as evil doers wanting to do evil. They're getting paid to do a job.
Well, no, quite specifically, they were there to try to woo you over onto the bad guy's side because they saw you had a common enemy.
Yeah.
It was two vampires having a tussle. You didn't like either vampire, but they saw that you hated Vampire A and tried to recruit you for Vampire B.
Right.
And said, hey, we also hate Vampire A.
Right.
Why don't we join forces and take him down, Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, they're just doing a job there.
Yeah.
You weren't directly at odds.
Right. But it was that simple check that basically said we're not saying I'm going to take you down. Okay, well then I'll set up a fight. That's a thing that you're going to want.
Yep.
We didn't present that. And so it never happened. It was never forced.
You had a bit of an argument with him, but that was about the worst
in the alley.
Yeah.
I had to, and that's what I was saying. It's when I set that up, I left that moment knowing more than I needed to know and saying yeah, this is just a setup.
Yeah.
They're just doing a job.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go hunt these guys down. I have no reason to.
Yeah.
And so the hunt never happened.
Yep, exactly.
Whereas I think in other games it would have been expected that she would show up with her thugs.
I mean, she was going to, but you guys
But it was all handled.
Set some NPCs up that trounce them for you because of good roleplay. More consequences of your actions, you know?
Correct. And that's what I felt. I felt it was very redeeming from both a storytelling and an investment sake. That you listened well to the story and where the beats were more important.
Yeah.
And that,
right.
again...
Well, thank you.
We're not saying that this is easy. None of this is easy.
Sure.
This takes... I mean, we still screw up all the time.
All the time.
I feel like I need to trash my D&D campaign currently because I've buried it into the ground so poorly that some of my players may never come back and want a game with me again. But at the same time, I look at my next game and I say, these are the things I'm going to do better.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best thing I can say for this right here is that to prepare yourself for what's next is just prepare yourself and do it.
Yep.
Step into it as a storyteller and get better.
Vibe check at the door and introspection about what you can do better as a storyteller and just implement it for your next game session.
All right. So next month's 101 is rolling with the punches.
Yeah, it's going to be we're going to be talking about improv, effective note-taking, etc. How you can do exactly what we were just talking about here and vibe check at the door and make adjustments and make the best of rolling with the punches at the table.
We also have next week's show is our
monthly system spotlight. Yeah.
What are we doing?
Oh, we're doing Dark Souls RPG.
Oh Lord, we're
it's
dead.
An IP I care very much about. I'm a huge Dark Souls fan. Recently ripped through Elden Ring and stuff like that. So we're gonna see how it got the RPG treatment and what we like and maybe what we don't like. You can find us on Twitter at @ST_Conclave, on Instagram at @ST_Conclave. Listen to us live every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave. And join us up on our Discord. You can toss us some questions like Nevin did tonight. We'll answer them on the air, or just talk to a bunch of other storytellers and bounce story ideas off of. You can find that link on our Twitter as well as our website, storytellerconclave.com.
We'd like to thank our Patreon members who help us out every single month, especially our name members, Knox in the Box, Subjet Sam, the Arcane Asylum, Sparkle Motion Veteran, and Hulavu, as well as Sean. You help us out so much, and we appreciate that. There's extra content that gets pushed up there, and you'll get to see more and more of that as we move through this year.
Yeah, we're working on some improvements.
Our pre-show music is by Arcane Anthems. Please go and check them out at patreon.com/Arcane Anthems. Our intro music is Beyond the Warriors by Geefrog. You can find that at geefrog.bandcamp.com or on Google Music. And our outro music, which you're hearing right now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Mid-Air Machine. You can find that at freemusicarchive.org.
Big shout out as always to our families, Vicky and Sean. Thank you so much for loving and supporting us. All of our friends who've sat with us at our tables and give us these great stories to share with you, and you, every single one of our listeners. We love you so much.
Love you guys.
Good night.
Good night.